Masechet Nedarim Daf Nun. Today is all Agadot, one famous story about Rabbi Akiva and a few other fascinating stories. We just saw a story about Rabbi Yehuda, who lived a very modest, impoverished lifestyle, even though he was literally sitting on a pot of gold. And so now we're going to see Rabbi Akiva also, who and his wife, who suffered through poverty, but eventually became rich. Rabbi Akiva, it kadasht le batra debar kalba sabua. Rabbi Akiva did kiddushin, betrothed to the daughter of Kalba Sabua. He was one of the wealthiest men in Israel. He was called that, according to the Talmud Bavli, because Kalba is a dog, and someone who came to his house hungry as a dog, he would feed him, and he would leave Sabua satisfied. That's probably a midrash on his name. The Talmud Yerushalmi explains that he was probably traced himself to the tribe of Kaleb ben Yefuneh. That's why it was called Kalba. Anyway, Shama Kalba Sabua Adra Hana'a Mikol Nichse. Kalba Sabua heard that his daughter had eloped to this guy, and he disinherited her from all of his property. He didn't feel like this boy was worthy of his rich family, a poor, impoverished boy. We already saw a slightly different version of this story in Masechet Ketubot, where it says that he is the shepherd. And there it actually says that she proposes to him and says, "If I will agree to marry you if you go and study." Here it's missing those details. Azla it nisiba le, and then even though the father disinherited her, she did not listen to the father, but rather went ahead and married Rabbi Akiva. Besitva havaganu be'tibna. During the winter, they would sleep in a storehouse of straw. They were very poor, so they couldn't. They didn't own a house or home, and so they would just go and lie down in some storehouse. Havaka manket letibna min mazia, and Rabbi Akiva would pick out the straw from her hair. A nice little romantic scene here. Amar la ihavayli ramen alech Yerushalayim dedahaba, and he said, if I could afford it, I would put on your head a Jerusalem of gold. This is where it comes from. Yerushalayim shel zahav, but here in the Aramaic, de dahava. This means a crown that is in the shape of the city of Yerushalayim. These were very popular back then, these decorative ornamental crowns that would be in the shape of a city. Here is one depicting Tyche, the goddess of fortune, also known as Fortuna, as the Roman goddess, the goddess of luck, and she is wearing a city of gold. On a crown that's in the shape of a city. So that's what he means by this. As I would buy you this very, very expensive crown for your head if I could afford it. So at that point, you see that they're feeling bad, that they're so impoverished. And so, to help out, Eliyahu comes dressed as a person and knocks on the door of the barn. Amar lehu, havuli purta detibna diyalad te'iteti veletli mida'am la'aguna. And he says, please, can you give me a little straw, because my wife gave birth and I don't even have anything that she could lie down on, just the raw ground. A little straw would be amazing. Amar la Rabbi Akiva le'intete chazi gabrad afilu tibna la'it le. I presume they gave them some straw. And then Rabbi Akiva told his wife, look at this guy. He doesn't even have straw, right? We should feel so lucky that at least we have straw, right? In other words, poverty is always subjective, and so although they're impoverished compared to her rich father, and probably compared to most people, but there's still someone even poorer that needs their straw, and so I guess that made them feel a little better. She said, I don't want you to go to work. I'm okay being poor. I want you to go and study Torah in the house of the teacher, in the house of the rabbi. Azal tateh sereh shenin kamed Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbi Yoshua. And so he did. Right. So in this story, she asks him, she requests that he go study Torah after they're married, whereas in the one in Ketubot, it's before they're married as a condition. So he goes and studies for 12 years in the with Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Akiva is a third generation Tana, and these are second generation Tanaim. Lemishlam tarte sereshenin ka ata lebete shama minachore bete dekamar la had rasha ledebitu. After 12 years, so now time to come home. And so he's coming home, and he's passing by his house. He overhears from inside the house a certain wicked person speaking to his wife. And the wicked person is saying, Shapir abed lich abuch chada de la dame lich ve'od shabkach al melut chayut kol kulehon shenin. The wicked person said, you know what, your father did well disinheriting you. He was right to do that for two reasons. Number one, that he's not your type. He's not similar to you. You're high class. He's low class, and he was not worthy of you. And second of all, look how he treats you. He leaves you like a widow, even while he's alive, right? You're like aguna. You have no husband, and you can't go marry anybody else either, and you're just sitting here impoverished, right? What kind of husband is this? And she wants to counter this rasha and express how this was her will. She's totally willing to sacrifice, and she wants actually him to go. So she doubles down and says, if he would listen to me, then he would go and study for yet another 12 years. All right, I don't know if she was saying this just to push away this rasha, but presumably she wouldn't say it if she didn't mean it. And Rabbi Akiva overheard her saying this. Oh, look, I have permission to go study more. You know what? I'm going to go back and study. Everybody has a question. Why didn't he at least come in and say hello? Right? Spend a few days at home in between. It sounds like he just turns right around and doesn't even knock on the door. Maybe because he wants to have this continuity, right? Once you come home and get comfortable there, then it'll be harder to go back, and his mind will always be kind of thinking about the comforts of home. And so he goes back to have now continuous 24 years of study. Hadad azal have tarte sere shena acharanayata. He was there for another 12 years. Ata be-24 alfin zuge tamideh. When he comes back, now he's accompanied with 24,000 pairs of students. So 1,000 pairs of students for every year that he was away. Interesting that it's pairs, which reflects on the style of learning and chevruta that was around even then, and that was significant. It doesn't say that he came back with any students on the first time that he came and the first time here, and at least in this version of the story. Other versions of the story, he does come back with students. Maybe in this version of the story, the first 12 years is for himself, for him to learn everything on his own, and then the next 12 years is his becoming a teacher and gathering this large following. And so now he's coming home. Now he's a renowned sage, and everybody in the town's coming to greet him. And she got up to go and greet her husband. And this same Rasha, still torturing her, says, and where do you think you're going? Right, look at you. You look disheveled. You have your clothes are in tatters. You're going to go and greet this great sage looking like that? She quotes a pasuk that a righteous man knows the life of his animal. So this is kind of surprising. She's comparing herself to an animal. The point is that even if I be disheveled and look like an animal, he would know that I am his, and he will recognize me. And so she was subservient to him and supported him, and actually encouraged him to go and do everything. He will recognize my self-sacrifice and know who I am. It doesn't matter how I look, right? He'll recognize me no matter what. And that turns out to be true. Atat le'it chazuyele. So she came to be seen, to present herself to be seen by him. Ka madchan lada banan, and he had his students there, his bodyguards, are pushing her away. Right? They don't know her. They think she's just some beggar who's coming to bother him, and so they're pushing her away. Amar lehon hanichula shedi v'shelachem shelahu. Famous words. Rabbi Akiva says, leave her, because all of my Torah and all of your Torah, all these 24,000 students, all of our Torah, shelah, belongs to her. She is the one that's responsible for making this happen. So therefore, let her through. Shama kalba sabua ata ve'itshil al nidre ve'ishterai ve'ishteri. And now kalba sabua heard that his son-in-law that now became a famous scholar, well regarded, and he undid his vow. He asked for it to be undone, and it was dissolved. Right? Hey, would you have made this vow knowing that your son-in-law would be like this? He says no. In the other version in Ketubot, he didn't recognize that this great sage coming was in fact his son-in-law, and he goes to the Rabbi Akiva and says, I want to undo my vow because I feel bad that my daughter is so poor. And Rabbi Akiva says, had you known that he would be a Talmid Chacham, would you do it? He says, no, I wouldn't do it, even if he knew one halacha. And he undoes it and reveals that, oh, I am he. Okay, in this version is just more straightforward, is lacking that drama. It sounds like in this version that Kalba Sabua knew that it was Rabbi Akiva, and nevertheless he says, oh, well, now I see I was wrong. And I would not have made this vow had I known this, and so he was able to dissolve the vow, and that way he was able to give his property over to his daughter and to his son-in-law. All right, so that's the story, and now we're going to explain how Rabbi Akiva became rich. It wasn't just from tuition from these students, but it was not from tuition, where you saw before you're not supposed to get paid for teaching Torah, but rather from the following. Min shit milei atar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva became rich from 6 different sources. Min kalba sabua. Number 1, kalba sabua. After he dissolved the vow, he was able to give them property. Min ilend de sifinta dechot sifinta abdin le min ayana zimna chada an sheyuh al kef yama atahu ashkache. From a certain ship. We're going to see down here, this is probably a ship of Ishmaelites. And on the ships back then, they would put a ram or a sheep as decoration. If it was a warship, it would be some kind of actual strong item that they could use to ram other boats. Otherwise, they made for decoration. And so on ships, they would have this type of ram. And one time, there was some sailors who forgot their ram on the seashore. They left it there by mistake. And Rabbi Akiva happened to stop by, and he saw this ram, and he found that there was money inside. They were hiding their money inside that ram's head at the front of the ship, and they left this whole ram with money in it, and it was lost property. I guess they was sailed and were long gone. There was no way to return it. And so he stumbled on a treasure trove, and he became rich from that. The third one, min gavza de zimna chada yaheb arba'a zuzeh lesipuna. This is from a log that was full of wood. How did that happen? He gave 4 dinars to sailors as an investment. He says, you're going on a trip, here's 4 dinars, go buy something exotic in wherever you're going, and then bring it back, something that will be worth more money here, right, and as an investment. Amar lehu aiti li midam vela ashkachu ela gava al kef yama. He said, bring me something, but they went and they came back, and the only thing they found was a log on the seashore. So they brought it to him and said, sorry, all we could find is a log. Madana, right? Our master, take this, at least for now, and this is the best that we could do to bring you this log. Ishtakach tava mele dinare. So Rabbi Akiva took the log home, was looking into it, and found that it was full of dinar. Tezimna hada tabat sefinta vekule iska hava machet behu gavza v'ishtakach behu zimna. What happened is that there was a ship that sunk, and the merchandise, meaning the money that they used to got from selling the merchandise, they stored in this log. But then the ship sank, and this is a lost treasure that happened to be in the log. The people these sailors didn't realize it, and so this is a found treasure. Those sailors are gone, and so he was able to keep it. And so that's the third way. Now, this disrukita from these Ishmaelites, this was probably the same as the story above with the ram, because otherwise there'll be 7 items, and there's no explanation of this one. And so the next one is umin matronita, from an aristocratic Roman woman. The story is not told here, but the explanation is that he borrowed money from this woman, and he said, God will be my guarantor. Don't worry about it, right? Even if I don't pay, God will pay you back. Came time to pay back the loan, and there was some princess who became insane and threw her jewelry into the sea. And so happens that this woman, this aristocratic woman, found that purse of jewelry. And so she told Rabbi Akiva, you know what? Your debt has already been paid by your guarantor. The aristocratic woman saw it as a miracle that God sent her this jewelry as payment for Rabbi Akiva's loan, and therefore Rabbi Akiva did not have to repay the loan. It was forgiven, and Rabbi Akiva kept the money, and that's the next way that he got rich. You see that these are all miraculous ways. Umin ishto shel turnas rufas umin keti'a bar shalom. And the last two are from surprising enemies who actually turned out to be friends. So the wife of Turnus Rufus. Now, Turnus actually comes from tyranny, right? A tyrant. He was actually a tyrant. He was the Roman governor of Judea during the Bar Kokhba revolt. In other words, this Turnus Rufus is the one who was responsible for all those terrible decrees, and the one who was responsible for killing and torturing Rabbi Akiva himself. Nevertheless, his wife was like Jews and like Rabbi Akiva, and she converted, according to this story, and gave her money to Rabbi Akiva. Oh, and the last one is this Kitia Bar Shalom, some prominent Roman who defended the Jews and tried to save them. Not successful, but because he did like the Jews, and he was executed because he tried to help the Jews, but he left his fortune to Rabbi Akiva, and his colleagues. Rabbi Akiva received half of it in this story. The point of these couple of stories is that even though many Romans were terrible to the Jews and caused the Bar Kokhba revolt and killed Rabbi Akiva and so many terrible things, there were also some Romans who recognized that the Jews were good, and recognized Rabbi Akiva was a great sage and did not deserve this, and they couldn't save him, but the least they could do is show their support financially, and Rabbi Akiva was able to get rich from them. All right, that's the end of the story of Rabbi Akiva, and now a few more stories. Rav Gamda yahiv arba'azu zeh l'sipur na'eh la'tuye behon mida'am la'ashkachu. So once we talked about investing with sailors, Rav Gamda also, he invested 4 zuz, and he gave it to some sailors. He says, go find me something valuable. They went and their trip, but they did not find anything. Achu le behon kufa. So they brought a monkey. They went to wherever they went, India or something, and they found a monkey there. Ishtamit al lecharta chafru batre ashkachu dirbiya al margaliyata. Aitinun le kulehon. But turns out this monkey was like Curious George, right? He got into some trouble, and he went into a hole. He's going and hiding in the hole, and now they had to get him out. So the people had to go and dig out the hole in order to get the monkey out. And while they're digging out the hole, they found that the monkey was crouching over some pearls, and they brought the pearls to Rav Gamda, meaning, right, this is because we were looking for this monkey. Monkey led us to the pearls, and so miraculously his investment turned out to be very good. Even though the monkey itself was not worth so much, it led to a much bigger find. So, kind of similar story. Amrale bar kesal Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananya. Torah mefo'ara bechli mecho'ar. Okay, so now more back to the theme that we saw above, that Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Akiva, when they were learning Torah, they were impoverished. So now another great sage who has a different deficiency, that he was ugly. So the daughter of the emperor went to the Rabbi Yoshua ben Hananya and said, Torah mefo'ara, the magnificent Torah, is in such an ugly vessel, meaning you're a great sage, you know so much Torah, but how come you're so ugly? All right. Amar la limdi mi bet avuch b'meh manichin yayin. So instead of Yoshua, instead of getting insulted and walking away, he wanted to teach her an important lesson. And so he does it with something that she can understand. And she says, I'm going to give you an answer. You could learn it from your own household, right? You're the daughter of the emperor. So let's see. In your home, in the emperor's home, where do you store your wine? Oh, we put it in earthenware. That's the cheapest type of vessel that you can possibly think of, right? We store our fine wine in cheap earthenware vessels. So Rabbi Yoshua said, everybody, all the poor people everywhere in the world, stores their wine in earthenware vessels. And you also? You're the same as everybody else? You should put your fine wine in vessels of silver and gold. Wouldn't that be more appropriate? He says, yeah, you're right. You see, this is follows her own opinion that something glorious should be stored in something that looks beautiful. So she did. She now put all the wine in gold and silver and gold vessels. Usri, but it's spoiled, no good. Amar la af oraita ken v'ha'ika shapirin ugmirin. Amar la I havu senu havu gemirin tefer. So she comes back to him and says, "Oh, it's all spoiled." Well, yeah, that's why, right? These metals are not good for the taste of wine. They can even cause health risk. To store things in these in gold and silver. So she realized her mistake, and that wine has to be stored in something cheap. That's what keeps the wine the best. And so now we explained to her the nimshal, right? You see, the Torah is also the same way. Torah is best learned and kept and transmitted by people who are not necessarily so good looking. That way they can concentrate on their minds, on their spirit, on their studies, and they don't have to think about how they dress and how they look. And then we ask, or she asks, hold on, but there are also good-looking sages, right? Not all sages are ugly, but they're also knowledgeable. And his answer was, if they were ugly, they would even be more learned, right? The fact that they look nice is actually a hindrance, is a handicap to them. Because then look, people tend to be more friendly with people that look good and invite them to more weddings and parties and want to hang out with them, and so they have to spend time socializing and shopping and looking good, and that actually takes away from their Torah. So they're so great they can even learn Torah and do that, but if they were ugly, they would be even more learned. All right, great lesson. Ahi ta'atya lekamed Rav Yehuda min harda ledina v'itchayabt min dina. Now, a fun story of a woman who came before to Rav Yehuda in the harda for judgment, and she was found guilty. Whatever it is, we don't know what the case was. Amra le Shemuel becha hachi danan, and she asked Rav Yehuda, your teacher Shemuel, would he have judged in the same manner, right, and found me guilty? Amar le yadatle. So Rabbi Yehuda says, what, you know him? Like, why are you asking about my teacher Shemuel? Amar le'in. Yes, I do know him, right? And I think he would have been more lenient. He would have taken my side. and she wants to prove that she knows him, so she describes what he looked like. Gusa v'rabba kerese ukam v'rabba shineh. Yeah, he was short and pot-bellied, fat, and he was dark, and he had big teeth. Right? He wasn't very handsome. Amar la lebazuye ka'atit. What, are you coming here to disparage him, to make fun of my teacher? That's why you're bringing him up? Right? What kind of person are you? May this woman be excommunicated. Pak'a umeta. And she blew up and died as a punishment for saying that. Okay, didn't end up as such a funny story. But the point is, this follows the one before, saying that greatness, just like great wine, you put in simple, ugly vessels, so too Torah is best kept in sages who are not so handsome, and so Shemuel is a good example of that. All right, Mutar bebesa turmita. All right, now we're going all the way back to the Mishnah, that if someone says a tavshil, a cooked item, is prohibited to me, then that refers to loose, liquidy items that you eat with bread. But if it's something hard, then that's not called tavshil. Tavshil means the thing that they typically eat with bread, but not a standalone dish. And so this now is going to include this special type of egg that's prepared in a certain way that is not called tavshil. Usually eggs, if it's like shakshuka eggs, and it's loose, so you'd eat that with bread. But this one is standalone. Okay, now what is this? My besa turmita amash Shemuel. We just talked about Shemuel, so now we're going to quote some of his Torah. Remember, Shemuel was also a doctor, so we're going to get some medical advice too. Abda David la shavi alfa dinare ume'ayeh la alfa zimne b'maya chamimeh v'alfa zimne b'maya kerire ad de mit zutra ki hechi de b'la'ita. He says, listen, this is very hard to make this type of egg. If you have a servant who knows how to make this type of turmita egg, the servant is worth 1,000 dinar, right? Because you can't find help, can't find anyone who knows how to make it. The way to make it is that you have to put it for 1,000 times the egg in cold water and in hot water, and 1,000 times in cold water. You keep putting it back and forth, I guess pretty quickly, until it shrinks, it shrivels up. It's so small that you could swallow the egg whole. V'im eat kiba serich ala. And now this is good. I don't know if necessarily for the taste, but it's good for medicinal purposes. If someone has some kind of lesion in his intestinal tract, so then if you eat this egg, that part of that lesion will stick to the egg. Ve'echad nafka, and then when it comes out the other end, ve'atya yada asya mai sama mitba'ele ubemai mitase. Then the doctor can examine it when it comes out and see what exactly the diagnosis is, what was the problem, and then he'll know what medicine to prescribe so that it can be healed. So in other words, this type of egg was the early version of an endoscopy. Shemuel hava badik nafshe bekulcha ad mi saterin enashe bete ale sa'arehon. Shemuel, I guess himself maybe didn't have this egg. He would use a cabbage stalk that he would swallow whole, and then it would go through his digestive system, and he used that to check himself. And this was very difficult for the body, that he looked so faint that his family members would be tearing their hair out, right? Mistarin, taking out the people of his home, their hair, because they thought he was dying from the pain of this procedure. But this was also kind of like a colonoscopy, cleaning out his system, and apparently even got a little sample, a biopsy of the problem that came out the other side, that you can use to diagnose the problem. All right, amazing. Tenanatam. Now we have a Mishnah in Masechet Ma'asrot that says, Haya ose bech lo pasin lo yochal bibnot sheva. Bibnot sheva lo yochal bich lo pasin. Maike lo pasin mina de te'ene da'abdin min nehon lipede. Since we were talking about different foods and different ways that they are prepared, so now a couple of halachot that relate to such a thing. That there's a halacha, it's in the Torah, that says if there's a worker who's working in a field, the worker has a right to eat some of the produce that he is himself picking from the field. It's not nice that a person should have all these things. Like if you're working in Dunkin' Donuts, then you should be able to eat a few donuts if you want. It's kind of dangerous to do that, but the point is, it's not nice to have a worker dealing with all this food and then not let him have some. However, there is a limitation, which is even if you have different workers who are picking different types of figs, they can only eat the fig that they are picking. And so if they're working with klopasin figs, then they can't go and eat some benot sheva figs. And the other way around also, whichever one is better and more expensive or less expensive, doesn't matter. If they're going and picking benot sheva pigs, they can't go and eat the klopasin figs. And what are klopasin figs? They are a type of fig that you make lipde. Some kind of compote, some dessert, and that's how you make it from those figs. There was a certain guy who gave his slave to his friend so that the friend could teach him how to prepare 1,000 different varieties of compote from figs. So his friend knew 1,000 recipes, and this guy sent his slave there to go and learn it. Probably he paid his friend so that his slave could learn it. And once then the slave would come back, and that way the slave would know all these 1,000 recipes. This you see is follows up with what we said before, that this special type of egg, right? If you have a servant that knows how to make it, right, it's somebody who's worth 1,000 dinar. And so, also you have to do something 1,000 times. So there's a key number that's going through all these stories. So anyway, he wants his chef slave to be able to know all 1,000 recipes. But what happened is, he went to the friend, and the friend taught him only 800 recipes for this dessert. So the friend who sent the slave sued him, brought him to the court of Rabbi, and saying, I hired him to teach 1,000 recipes, and I only have 800 recipes. Okay, it's kind of funny. Amar Rabbi, Avotenu amru nashinu toba anu afilu be'ainenu lo ra'inu. And so Rabbi doesn't say what he ruled on in this case, but he's just remarking about how luxurious they are living, and saying, our forefathers said, we forgot good, that during the time of the Bet HaMikdash, things were so good, they had great luxury, but after the destruction, during the exile, they forgot all that luxurious living that was totally lost. They forgot how good it was. But at least in their time, they had once known it, but they forgot it. Us, in our time, we never even saw such luxury. It doesn't even exist anymore. But here, now he sees in front of him this kind of getting back to better times, that there are 1,000 recipes, and a person will be so upset that he's missing 200 of the 1,000 recipes, and upset enough that he's going to bring his friend to court. And so I think this is yet another example following through on the theme that those who devote themselves to Torah don't have to worry about their finances, like Rabbi Akiva, who found money miraculously so that he could live well. But it's the devotion and not caring about it. Well, that's the irony of it, right? Like Rabbi Yehuda in the previous part of the story, that he actually doesn't want the money, doesn't need the money. So it's kind of the two sides of having money. On the one hand, hand, better to be ugly, better to not have material, right? So you can focus on spiritual and intellectual endeavors. All these things are handicaps and prevent one from doing so. And so that is seen from all the hardship that the rabbis would go through, and in order to study Torah without any material things. On the other hand, the reward is also there, that as a reward for not caring about money, these sages do find a way, one way or another, to miraculously find wealth. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.